Hi, I'm Stephen Dodd. As most of you will probably be thinking, who the heck is that? I'll quickly introduce myself. I started my photography career as a studio assistant in Liverpool way back in 1979, and apart from a 3-year break to study photography at Blackpool and the Fylde in the early 80s, I've been working full-time in professional commercial photography ever since. My main areas are advertising, corporate, industrial, food and packaging photography. For what it's worth, I'm a member of the Association of Photographers, I'm qualified with the Federation of European Photographers, and I'm a fellow of the British Institute of Professional Photography. I've done quite a lot of judging over the years, especially for the admissions and qualifications to the BIPP, and I've been on the judging panel for the National Photography Awards on a handful of occasions. Before we jump in, I'd just like to congratulate everyone that submitted work to this competition. It's never easy putting your work and yourself up for critique, so well done for giving it a go. Well, let's just start off with the mono section. So, first up, we've got Lunch for a Lion Cub. It's a great shot that proves you have to be in the right place at the right time. This would have scored much higher if the cub had actually been eating his lunch, or at least with a paw on top of its prey. Of course, you've no control over that, but I'd suggest trying to increase the density of the shot, really bring out the detail of the lion cub fur, and making the image dark would also add a lot to the drama. Eels. Well, it's a difficult subject right from the start. I like the almost abstract pattern of the eels, but I think it's looking a little flat. It'd be worth experimenting a little bit with the black and white conversion, try and introduce a bit more density and contrast to improve the shape and separation. Bubbling over, an interesting concept and a good effort at a different, more quirky pack shot. The angle composition suggests movement, but the impact of the image could be improved by making the puddle of bubbles more obvious, and maybe even seeing the top of the glass behind to show that it's actually bubbling over. Donut peaches. A lovely composition, a good choice of subject. The depth of focus well controlled, and it keeps the attention where it's required. I'd suggest reducing the image contrast or diffusing the light to give softer shadows would really improve the overall appeal of this. Eggs staring. I've mixed feelings about this. I like it as a concept and as a piece of artwork, but I feel the illustrated eyeballs were too incongruous and didn't fully fit in with the photography brief. They kind of become more important than the photography element itself. Go to work on an egg. It's an interesting picture of an egg, a very good picture of an egg. I like that the photographer has pushed the image of such a simple object that little bit further. It's dark, it's hard, it's like a pebble. I know it's not a simple picture to shoot and it's a good technical shot, but I'd just like to have seen that idea carried further. Melons. Another great street moment. I think this needs a little work to balance things up though. Lift out the expression of the guy pushing the barrow, more density in the melons, and maybe dark down the guy on the left who draws our attention away. Pescado fresco, a really interesting environmental portrait with a lovely atmospheric feel. I like the use of the markers and I can almost smell the fish. However, I really want the fishmonger to be actually doing something, handling fish, being involved, talking to a customer, etc., rather than just being a little bit disconnected and just reaching into space. Of course, trying for something out of reach may be a metaphor for something we'll never know. Dias ira. Not quite sure what to say about this. I like the concept and it's an interesting abstract on the food theme, but I don't really want to look at it that closely. The bread maker. This is a great idea and a lovely action shot using flash to freeze the movement. However, I'd prefer to see a much softer diffused light off the camera axis. This would result in a much more sensitive natural lighting. Pure, pour pleasure. It's good composition. Pouring shots are always tricky, so it's a brave choice. The out of focus background behind the jug is a little bit distracting and could have been avoided by moving the camera slightly to the left if possible. Also, the ice cream has lost definition by being out of focus at the front, a problem exacerbated by the high image contrast, causing a loss in highlight detail. Choco mono. Good use of short depth of focus, letting the ice cream jug recede, and a pleasing composition. The overall image suffers a little from the tonal similarities in the food. Lighting change or changes in the colour to raw conversion process could probably improve this significantly. Dried octopus, anyone? Yeah, I'll pass on the dried octopus for dinner. However, it's a great opportunity, well seen, really nice tonal qualities. The background's slightly confusing but gives context to the overall image. Lunch on the wing. Great shot, perfectly timed by a very patient photographer. Of course, I don't know if there's a film or digital capture, but it's a lovely monochrome edit. The out of focus background really helps, but I'd still like to see a little more tonal separation between the bird and the surroundings. Shoe bun, homemade. Food photography in monochrome is crazy difficult, but this is a great effort. Tonally, it's probably desirable to have a little more separation between the bun and the topping. Also, I think I'd like to see more of the bun's texture, as otherwise it loses a little character. Milk and cookies. This was close to being in the top 5. Great stop motion technique and tonal, very rich, all highlights preserved in the milk, and the cookies look tempting enough. If the author had caught sight of a cookie just entering the milk in the freeze frame, the image would have been elevated to the next level. You could cheat a little bit, wire a cookie in place, and then make your splash afterwards. Pistachio nut. A tricky close-up, but visually very interesting. Strong tones, bold contrast, and being scented gives a sense of strength to a humble nut. The depth of field doesn't quite pull the focus on the whole nut, but it's a good attempt, and it's better than my macro photography, that's for sure. Nearly ready to eat. Tonally very appealing, good use of colour, and a really interesting use of depth and shallow focus. My only gripe is that I'd like to have seen the near face and the stalk in focus rather than the slight back focus, which leads the viewer's attention to drift away from the subject. Grandma's Challenge. A strong contender for the top spot. I very much like the concept behind this. It's a clever twist on the food theme, although slightly borrowed from the TV ads. Again, it's slightly lacking in contrast for my taste, but easily in the top 10 here. Kiwi, another strong contender for the top spot. Beautiful and abstract. The macro view really opens up a very different sense of what you're looking at. Slightly lacking in contrast for my taste, but it's difficult not to like this one. Frozen, another strong contender for the top spot. Great concept, well executed, good use of duotone or tint, whatever it is. I'm only being slightly picky and saying I'm not keen on the central framing. Dancing with Tears, wonderfully delicate, simple and beautiful. I really can't fault this image. Chicken tagine. A great attempt at putting across the flavour of the cookery class and would probably serve really well in a leaflet or flyer for the school. Obviously you had a great time cooking, but unfortunately the lighting and the conditions in the kitchen don't help to present the food at its best. Breakfast. I loved the concept, but unfortunately this didn't quite reach its potential. You could really help this with more attention to the lighting and the exposure levels. The prop work is really great, although the milk on the cereal looks a little gloopy, and overall the shot may benefit from a more shallow bowl or by showing less of the existing one and concentrating on the figures. Modern women. Really nice concept, but the more simple the idea and content, the more important the execution becomes. I'm left uncertain if this grunge look is part of the concept. If it is, I'd accentuate the rawness of the image. If not, then perhaps try experimenting a little more with lighting and keep an eye on exposure levels. And if you're using a plain background, it really does need to be clean and free of camera spots and dust. Brain food. I do like the alternative interpretation of the brief, but I'm afraid that the image isn't really strong enough to carry the concept. Composition is okay, but I'd like to see a little more compelling in terms of colour and contrast. Of course, the people in the background are not within your control, but some interaction between the individuals would have helped. Once you have your truly candid shot, don't be afraid to talk to the people. Explain that you're taking a picture of the bookstall, there in the background, out of focus, but it'd be really great if they just looked at each other and smiled. Sometimes it works and sometimes you get beaten up. Seafood diet. A tasty looking dish with fresh garnish. I'd suggest looking a little more at the general exposure levels, and with such a dark background, although there's nothing wrong with that, perhaps bring a subtle backlight onto the food, and also a reflector or fill-in light on the foreground would help. If this was a commercial shoot, I'd probably ease off on the sauce and try to show more of the ingredients underneath. Also, maybe introduce some more height in the garnish to give it life by lifting it up. Diabetes. A good concept, strong diagonal and 1/3 composition. The success of a shot like this depends very much on the vibrancy and colour, so it's worth paying a little bit more attention to the levels, as this is a little underexposed. The paleo diet. A great concept and a good working of the idea. The portrait is tonally very nice and the engagement with the model is good. I'd like to see the primeval idea pushed further, and let's have bare teeth and raw flesh ripping. Cherries. Well, cherries are a difficult choice of subject. I like the simplicity of the composition, but wonder if it could be improved by offsetting the main point of interest to a 1/3 composition. I'd also like to see the colour of the cherries be more prominent, possibly by using a fill-in light or reflector. However, that's often difficult due to the reflective nature of the cherry surface, but worth trying. A scent of Melon Mountain. It's a good composition which could be improved with a little more brightness and vibrancy overall. You have to ensure the cut ingredients are really, really fresh and lively. Perhaps a white background will help to suggest the freshness. Bonio Jenga. It's a really fun picture and concept, although hands are always really difficult to incorporate into pictures. Perhaps it would have helped if the hand was a little less dominant, or dare I say it, more delicate. Also, I'm a little sad that the poor pooch is lost a little in the background against the blackness of the open doorway. Party cake. Nice cake, but a missed opportunity to really bring out the colour and the texture. Plus the focus on the cake isn't as good as I'd like to see. If this were a commissioned food shot, we'd take care to lift and separate, showing more cream and more jam, bringing out the colour and the texture of both. Leopard's larder. It's a bit gruesome, but a great picture, well observed and nicely framed, but perhaps would benefit from a little post-production to accentuate the plight of the poor beast. Maybe a vignette on the trees on either side to focus the attention. Dinner time. A completely lovely wildlife picture capturing a really decisive moment. Lots of patience required to get this one. I'd like to see the brightness of the bird lifted to help with the separation from the background. Maybe fill in flash, reflector, or just some post-production. Afternoon tea. At first glance, it's a lovely, bright, summery composition. I think the key food items, though, need to be in focus as the lovely, crumbly, tasty texture of the cake and the fruit is lost. The shoe bun has good colour, texture and detail, but a loss of focus in the other two front items is very unfortunate. Tonally, I'd like to see the background a little more sympathetic to the subject, as the pure white is quite stark and a little unfriendly. Cheese and wine. Well, it's a lovely composition, lovely tonal qualities. Overall, I like the painterly look, but I'm a little frustrated by the top of the front cheese being a little too bright. The oat cakes falling out of focus at the front, the dead space on the left of the cheese board, and the crumbs on the background. Despite those details, though, it's a lovely picture. Curved. This made me look twice at first. Bold lighting makes an interesting composition, and the colour works really well against the shade. I'm not sure whether I'd like to see a fresher banana or not. Broad bean. Beautifully simple composition, well presented. The choice of soft lighting complements the subject, although a little attention is required on those grey tones in the background, which really need to be cleaned up a little bit. Flavour. Well seen and nicely presented detail shot. Good use of colour and a simple composition to accentuate the subject. Homage to Sarah Lucas. It's a good, strong composition. It's a simple concept that would work well as a poster or a piece of wall art. Nothing much photographically to comment on, but keeping it simple is often good. Total Veggie. It's a great, fun shot. Lovely idea, well executed. Everything looks fresh and colourful. Minor complaints are the symmetrical composition would have really benefited from having a little cropping to make it perfectly symmetrical in the frame also. Lighting's basic, probably flash on camera maybe, but I think it actually contributes to the naive, fun comic book look. Fruit box. Good composition, use of colour and props. Fresh, well-prepared ingredients are essential for a shot such as this. Sharp knife and cut items placed at the very last second. Spice board. Again, good composition, good use of colour and props. Interesting lighting and maybe a use of vignette, although I'd rather see a more natural lighting approach to complement the natural ingredients. Either softer or more directional, but not with contradicting shadows as you have. Raspberry Fizz. For me, a clear winner. Excellent use of colour and composition. A simple, difficult subject handled well. The bubbles in the lower right corner may be accidental, but nevertheless, beautiful finishing touch. Nothing to fault. So there you have it, and the overall winner in the food category, Raspberry Fizz. Creative, colourful, lively, appealing, well executed and faultless. Very well done to the creator. And I just want to say thank you all for asking me to judge this competition, and I hope some of the comments have been useful and not too annoying. Thank you.